Hey everyone, I'm Alex.
And I'm Jack.
And today we'll be ranking the bosses of the Demon's Souls remake from worst to best, again. About a year ago, give or take a few weeks, Bluepoint's Demon's Souls remake became the first major PlayStation 5 launch title that anyone actually cared about. After being a topic of discussion for years among the Souls community, a modernized port of Demon's Souls felt increasingly like a Bloodborne 2 type dreamer's idea, until it was actually announced out of nowhere and soon enough brought the game that started it all to a new generation of players in glorious 4K. However, exactly a year ago on the dot, something else major occurred. Jack and I started our channel.
Making our very own YouTube channel was a dream of ours for about a decade by the time this began, and continues to be both rewarding but challenging every single day. When we figured the time was right for us to actually make it happen, we didn't calculate the incredible amount of time required for just about everything, ranging from thumbnail all the way up to the final touches in the editing stage. We're lucky to have such supportive families and friends, so we settled in quite naturally, but the daunting task of learning and improving on the fly was no easy feat. Even so, when Arkham Knight became the first of our videos to actually catch on, it immediately became a core memory that'll last for our entire lifetimes. But more importantly, the expansion of our channel outside of purely analytics and rather community, subscriber base, and quality of content has been an absolute joy. Without a doubt, running this channel with Alex has not only quite literally paid off by this point, but growing daily, becoming more efficient with editing and better at speaking, finding a unique voice, writing, and video style suited to us, and above all, working alongside one of my best friends every day has been one of the best decisions of my life. Let's get into the ranking.
At the time we were making the original video, I had placed the Dragon God second to last because I found him extremely difficult and tedious to face. With a year of experience under my belt and a platinum trophy long since earned, I find him pretty easy now. Although I still hate him. There is not 1 ounce, not one goddamn measly milliounce of fun in this abomination of a boss fight. I would sooner shave my pubes with a rusty kitchen knife coated in black pine resin than spend another second putting up with the Dragon God, and I'm sure Jack would agree. The Dragon God's line of sight is incredibly unintuitive, and during the part where you're on the lower level, it always looks like he can see you due to how his eyes are positioned on the side of his head. This is a sharp contrast from the first half of the fight, where it feels like he has X-ray vision with how often he sees you through walls. Boring, tedious, lengthy, and disappointing, the Dragon God is a pitiable excuse for an archdemon that I dread every playthrough.
Preemptively, I can assure you there will be major changes in our rankings cross-referencing last year's video to now, but sometimes bosses are just so bad, no matter how easy you take them down, it affects opinions as much as it would as if I tried to bribe you to do something, heinous for me with like a baby Ruth. Anyways, what I mean is that I died like 7 or 8 times last year, while this time around I first tried the armor spider with a distinct lack of challenge, but it was still just as miserable as if it was any other attempt. The awe of this fight's visual appeal does hold up, but quickly simmers, replaced by frustration at how they made the wrong choice with just about every decision, ranging from, as Alex previously put it, slashing him in the penis, up to, and especially, webs. I get it, it's a spider, so for the sake of immersion there's gotta be webs, but why do they still prevent you from rolling? This mechanic should have 100% gone by the wayside with the remake, and the same goes for the entrapping and narrow arena, of which is basically just the cheese tunnel and armor spider itself. Even as terrible as this is, it did beat out the Dragon God, so a toast to severe mediocrity, I guess.
The Dragon God and Armor Spider chugged so much shit they both got beaten out by a talking blob of swamp muck. This pitiable final road bump is twice the boss that either of those two will ever be.
I seriously enjoy Vanguard as well as every other introductory boss in the Souls games, although Vanguard holds a special place in my heart due to his obscene difficulty relative to player progression. This fight's extremely punishing nature was a purposeful marketing choice to serve as a hook, displaying the severe challenge that ended up being the overall moniker and appeal of the entire series. If you couldn't tell, it worked, and beating the tutorial Vanguard holds up as a top 5 moment of any playthrough if you manage to accomplish it, even more so with Barbarian class. The 4-1 Vanguard is more of a revenge character, and while I usually dislike repurposing early game bosses as normal enemies, it's a one-time mini-boss that drops the Grey Demon Soul in case you squandered your first opportunity, so it's fine. With the first ever booty stomp and ridiculously imbalanced stat padding, the Vanguard Demon is actually an enjoyable boss by all means.
This fight is tough to place because if you're online it could vary significantly in quality. I myself had a fairly clean open and shut showdown with another player, although Jack was not as lucky. For your amusement, we've compiled a lengthy compilation of Jack getting demolished, although we promise that 1, this is not why the old monk is ranked so low, and 2, Jack is at least pretty good at PvP in Dark Souls 2 and 3. The reason this fight is so low is it's just either really short or really easy. The offline one is so uninteresting it isn't even worth talking about, and the online version dies in about 3 or 4 hits without healing. Once the comedy of watching someone die to a joke boss wears off, the frustration of that staircase from hell starts to taint the experience and things just turn sour. The old monk isn't awful per se, but is just not around long enough to leave much of an impression.
As stated in years past, Alex and I have a soft spot for the laundry list of total junk bosses found throughout the Souls games. As no exception, Leechmonger's got all the makings of a good boss, minus a few key details that could have elevated this fight to a much higher potential. First, I think the arena is fantastic, and technically you don't even have to drop to the muck swamp at the bottom and can simply snipe from the fog gate. As well, a passive damage output like leeches to make up for minimal threat is a commendable idea. That being said, if there was a mechanic like Dirty Colossus where you could actively / intuitively get rid of the leeches, and if he also just had more health and mobility, the Leechmonger wouldn't be such a goofball.
This gameplay is just embarrassing. I was doing awful damage for some reason, and the fight is like 10 minutes long. Having to spend this much time with the Adjudicator made me realize that I was really not harsh enough on him in our original video. While he has the coolest lore in the game to me and a rather unique weakness, it's quickly dampened by the crushing monotony of hitting his wound, well, either hitting it or bouncing off it depending on the game's whim, and then walking around behind him to evade his sluggish, half-hearted attacks. Creativity alone does not a good boss make, dooming the Adjudicator to a lower end spot.
As you'll tend to notice with most boss rankings, early and late game bosses stand out significantly compared to those stuck in the middle of the road. This is the primacy effect, and bosses such as Phalanx are most definitely beneficiaries of this psychological phenomenon. Alex and I mutually agree that World 1-1 is a flaming shithouse, and relative to the preceding level, Phalanx sticks out like a sore thumb with like icy hot because he's not a holy improvement, but an improvement nonetheless. Conveniently, Turpentine and firebombs are scattered throughout the Boletarian Palace, so making quick work of the Phalanx guards is somewhat guaranteed, and with that task down, you literally cannot die. The lore behind this fight adds a clean finish to the overall piece, and while at best average, Phalanx is an ideal early game challenge.
The idea of a boss with no eyes is cool, but I think we cut him too much slack last time. He's not just easy, he's an outright joke. There must be a bargain bin sale on amateur surgical practices in Boletaria, because the way he swings at point-blank range you'd think he got a lobotomy as well. The bandages on his head don't do much to disprove this theory. I could kill this dopey Goomba in real life with my bare hands, so he's understandably no match for a skilled slayer of demons. He's not annoying at all, but is about one notch above the covetous demon on the difficulty meter, holding him back from glory.
I did make a promise early on that changes were due, and in the course of 351 days, Maiden Astraea and Garl Vinland managed to jump forward 6 spots in our ranking. I was reading the original video script earlier today, and I cannot believe how harsh I was in this fight. I mean, I did have some fair points, that's for certain, but in summary, my main issue was toxic, but just don't be an idiot and that'll take care of itself. As long as you generally mitigate aggression, you won't drop off the ledge, and while Garl Vinland's AI is definitely clunky, or better put cheesable, there is a level of intensity to this fight through mental chess instead of, say, a fast-paced duel that isn't existent in this game anyways. As well, while Alex and I try to prevent lore from being a major factor in the ranking of boss quality based on their fight, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Astraea's importance to the old one and in turn Boletaria, which also plays into her refusing to fight and referring to suicide instead. The fight overstays its welcome and isn't exceptional in any category, but leaves us both with a sense of accomplishment knowing we finally took down the Valley of Defilement.
Oh, how the tables have turned. I defended the Dirty Colossus last time, and now Jack is the guy putting in a good word for him. I still think he looks awesome and has a really interesting design, but it would be a lot more awesome if he didn't shoot like Helen Keller on roller skates. The coolest thing about this fight is seeing fire effects as you burn him to a crisp and that unique fly mechanic where you walk to torches to burn off his hordes of bugs. I'm not going to bash him since there's really nothing wrong with him, but he's definitely not playing with a full deck of cards if you catch my drift.
Once again, the middle-high region of bosses receives a radical change, with our originally second best boss in the game going from Champions League Final to Europa Conference League. In retrospect, there's nothing intrinsically special to the fight itself. If anything, all of our complimentary points from the first video were either points made due to us being in nostalgic denial, or straight up having nothing to do with the man-eaters at all. As the old saying goes, where there's smoke there's fire, but in this scenario it's more like steam from a stovepot, as there's a bunch of things this fight either laid ground for or did, but didn't do well when compared to most other bosses later in the series. Most notably, it's a gank, but both man-eaters are exact replicas of each other, and with proper damage you probably will have knocked out the first one by the time number 2 drops in as well. The AI is freakishly obnoxious, and because of it, offense and defense are repetitious, and while the arena is unique, the bridge is a bit too small for my liking. I don't mind this fight, but it could have been much better than the final product we have.
I can't imagine any of you expected to see Prototype Pinwheel up here this high. As easy as it is to poke fun at the Fool's Idol for her passive fighting style, Jack and I both think there's a lot going well for it. For starters, it has my favorite arena in the game by a mile, with the stained glass windows and church aesthetic in general. This game is always gorgeous, but the Tower of Latria is definitely the best looking area of the lot. Secondly, she has a decent amount of health, so unlike a lot of her competition, you're guaranteed to spend at least a minute or so avoiding her hidden electric traps and soul spears. It's sort of a fun memory game avoiding all this stuff, and it's nice that you can single out the real Fool's Idol if you know what you're doing and not be forced to run around all over the place. I also like how there's a ton of zombies wandering around the pews. Must have been a real boring sermon because these dudes are seriously out of it, minus that asshole on the upper floor you gotta thwack before walking into the main room. This fight is both visually appealing and pretty fun, so it stands to reason it'd place fairly high.
In a similar vein to Manus, Flamelurker is simply too fast for this game to work congruently. Not to mention, he verges on easy, mostly due to his insistence on doing nothing at all, as well as a lack of significant power behind his swings. I really did enjoy this fight, however, as up to that point and beyond, nothing rivals the intensity the Flamelurker brings, not to mention the overall aesthetic is undeniably the best this game has to offer. I wish the Flamelurker had more of everything, and while it is difficult, it lasts far too short to earn a higher placement.
This is another major upset from our last video. Honestly, I don't get what my issues with the Tower Knight were, because I had a blast fighting him this time around. Sure, it's kinda boring killing all of the archers, but it's not that hard, and once that formality is over with, there's a great time to be had ankle biting. Seeing steam shoot out of his ankles is both a satisfying visual and a great way to indicate your progress despite the health bar not reflecting damage due to the gimmick of the battle. Narrowly dodging shield slams and stomps then rushing in to punish him feels really clean, especially if you dodge by running rather than rolling. As ankle-biting bosses go, this is definitely one of the best in the series, which isn't bad considering he's the prototype for them all.
In the world of Boletaria, this muckball is the remains of this young hunk, who's actually a puppet thrown in his old image to, I guess, cosplay as the false king. The lore is exceptionally deep, so I won't get into it, but I will recommend reading it on your own time, as it explains much of the world of Demon's Souls overall. That being said, the king's puppet has all the elements of a later Souls game boss and some, which makes him an absolute standout when compared to almost every other boss in the game. Attack variety and combinations can not only bring balanced difficulty, but add flair that would otherwise be sorely missing from bosses as shown in this case. The theatrics of mid-air wind gushes and dashing swipes make up somewhat for the minimal difficulty you're likely facing thanks to a near infinite pool of new moon grass found in 1.3 and 1.4, but the fight still feels a bit neutered in the aspect of drama that's typical of final bosses. King Allant is unique compared to the rest of Demon's Souls in that he has an attack pool rivaling that of bosses found in Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne, but lacks serious challenge, stopping him from potentially being the #1 boss in the game.
Thinking about it, Penetrator is a pretty awesome nickname to have. You're either good at killing or f***ing, both of which I imagine would do wonders for your street cred back in the Middle Ages. This guy must just be known for sling and dong though, because his fighting talent leaves a lot to be desired. Not to say he's boring by any means, I think this fight is great. Sometimes it's just nice to have a relaxing sword fight where you don't have to worry about hilt pimp slaps and curse attacks. That badass intro of his goes a long way too. That's an entrance fit for WWE. I'm pretty sure The Undertaker did something like that once. The Penetrator has a lot of fancy spin moves, which are about as effective as spin moves are in real life. Read, not vary. I still feel cool dodging him though, so I won't gripe. All in all, the Penetrator is a pretty rad knight who deserves every bit of praise he often gets.
1 year on, same top dog. Even after repeat, there's no question the sheer awe of the Storm King alone makes him worthy of retaining his place as the #1 boss in the game. Not to mention the flair, intensity, challenge, and unique gameplay that separates him from the rest of the pack anyways. The true reasoning behind the Storm King's rousing success in the remake is the intensity of the Storm Ruler that due to graphical limitations on the PS3, the original could never achieve. As well, with the DualShock 5's haptic feedback, it's simply the most immersive boss in the series to date. The epic score mixed with the beautiful rainy arena both collide with the actual feeling of holding and using the Storm Ruler to give off the real-life sensation of taking down the god of the shrine, and for the sake of comparison, it feels like you're the colossal titan in the Wall Rose invasion. To Alex and I, there's no one who even comes close to rivaling the Storm King for the top spot, and while our rankings have changed massively in a year, the Storm King holding out as the best Demon's Souls has to offer wasn't even a question. We are beyond blessed to have done this for an entire calendar year, and here's to 2022.
Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. This was a pretty cool way to celebrate our anniversary, we think, and hope it was worth waiting an extra week for. It really is awesome thinking about how far we've come since our debut, and inspiring to know that this is only the beginning. Next week we'll be tackling the bosses of Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, so stay tuned if that's your thing. That's all for now. Deuces.